Okay, so for some reason, everyone seems to be down on Olu Fashanu, but I personally don't get it. At only 21 years old, he is both one of the most high-floor pass blockers and high-ceiling pass blockers in this entire class. At 6'6" and 317 pounds, he's in the 60th percentile for height and 55th percentile for weight. I'm not entirely sure how he got to be 6'6", given that both of his parents are 5'8", but we'll skip over that for now. At this above average size, he has high level movement ability, fluidity, and short area quickness. He's quick out of his stance and quick to hit his landmarks as a puller. He uses his excellent lateral quickness to consistently mirror and stay square to defenders, but also can recover quickly if he loses any ground. I think if offensive line were played without hands, which would be pretty funny, he would have the potential to be one of the greatest offensive linemen ever with how well he moves and his size. When he first gets into the NFL, he'll be a quality pass blocker from day one. As mentioned, his movement ability makes it very difficult to get around him and beat him to the edge, but it's also very difficult to win through him due to a very good anchor and elite ankle flexion. His ankle flexion allows him to absorb momentum without giving up any ground in the pocket. One step back and they're done, even when they get both hands into his chest. With the exception of the Ohio State game, which we'll discuss, trust me. But in general, his combination of lower body strength and flexibility allows him to anchor against power rushers, and his fluidity and short area quickness help him to cut off speed rushers. When he loses, it tends to be when defenders capitalize on technique-related mistakes he makes, rather than his own inability to do something. But even when he does make these mistakes, he has that recovery ability to get back in front of defenders and refit his hands during the course of the snap to regain the positioning battle. Lastly, he does show flashes of powerful punches to the chest of defenders, but it's quite rare, so I'll use this segment now to transition into the weaknesses section of the video, starting with his hand usage. He does an upward swing with his arms, which in theory could allow you to make strong punches into the chest of defenders to take away some of their momentum. However, this rarely ever happens for him. He's often inaccurate with his arms, constantly missing inside and landing on the chest. He's often late to throw his punches, and he doesn't throw his punches with much force, leading him to just kind of place his hands on defenders rather than really hit them. He just has a really difficult time using his hands in a meaningful way, and he's really more of a counterer than an attacker with his hands, which is not inherently bad, but it gives him less margin for error because he's letting the defensive lineman control the rep. And he often does let them control the rep because his late hands and outside hands, as well as his posture and big frame, allow defenders to easily get into his chest, and it can cause him to lose ground before he sets his feet, requiring him to put on the emergency brakes and actually get his feet set. This is why I think he struggled mostly against the Ohio State rushers, because he'd keep getting himself into position where his hands were late and horribly inaccurate, while allowing the defender into his chest, so he'd have them pushing him backwards while he had his hand on the defender's back, and he'd basically just be trying to win the snap with his lower body alone. So I don't think this contradicts my statement that I think he has a good anchor, because I do, but to clarify, I think he anchors well when he's able to place his hands well enough, but I think he'll need more than 1 or 2 steps to drop his anchor when he can't land his hands or when he allows defenders into his chest. This inability to land inside punches also caused him to overcompensate and lean heavily into punches, getting him out over his feet and off balance, allowing defenders to swim over him. Leaning so far out over his toes also made it difficult for him to change directions at times, which is another technique issue that can make him fall behind in the rep. I felt that defenders had a pretty easy time taking advantage of those technique mishaps with swims and spins. Outside of pass blocking, the big issue is that he's truly a terrible run blocker at this time. He has almost zero sustain on his run blocks, which was a concern for me before I found out that he had 8.5-inch hands, which are the smallest hands measured for an offensive tackle in combine history. So his lack of sustain comes from poor positioning and poor grip strength. In both run and pass protection, he also tends to play very high up and loses the leverage battle, which he'll need to fix in the NFL so he can maintain better core balance and leg drive, which he really doesn't show right now because he rarely moves defenders out of gaps. I also just don't think he has a great understanding of how the run game works right now, as he takes poor angles to defenders and struggles to cut off defenders' angles or seal them off in the run game. But with all this said, I value pass protection very high, and he has all the inherent tools. He just needs to learn more of the technique, and he hasn't been playing offensive tackle that long. I still have him as the second best offensive tackle in this class, even with all the people starting to move him much further down their boards. The bottom line for me is that the combination of his size and movement is excellent, and at such a young age and little experience at the position, he has such a high floor as a pass blocker and lots of time to develop his technique as he plays more and his strength as he ages more. For day one, I have him as a developmental starter, but I have his upside grade as high-end starter within 2 years, making him a first-round pick and my second overall tackle in the 2024 NFL draft class. So, what do you think? Agree? Disagree? Somewhere in between? Let me know what you think of Olu Fashanu below. If you like Troy Fautanu, make sure to check out my second channel where I'm going to be posting some more of these very short draft breakdowns because I'd like to get my opinions out on more guys, but I don't have that much time to put out long breakdowns. Although I recognize this one wasn't really long either, my JJ McCarthy video is going to be quite a lot, so I'm working pretty diligently on that, and I'm getting this one out in the meantime. Anyways guys, really hope you enjoyed. I'd love to hear from you below, and I'd appreciate if you left a like and subscribe, because it really helps out the channel. Otherwise, let me know who you want to see next. That's about it. Later.